but I'd like to introduce you officially to DuEwa Frazier. And she is an award-winning poet, writer, speaker, author, educator, performer, born in Brooklyn, New York. Raised in Queens, DuEwa has been honored with a mayor's proclamation in St. Louis, a Black Caucus of ALA Conference Literacy Presenter Award, Writers Digest Publishing Awards, honorable mentions, and NAACP Image Award nominations. She has and was featured in TEDx as a speaker in 2019 for her talk, Word is Bond. DuEwa is the author of a children's book that she just released, and she has been around the country selling out all over the place. Alice's musical debut, 2019, 2 teen novels, Quincy Rules, 2016, and Deanne in the Middle, 2014. DuEwa is also the author of several books of poetry, including Goddess Under the Bridge, Poems 2013. She is the editor of the NAACP Image Award that was nominated for an award, Check the Rhyme, an anthology of female poets and MCs, 2006. DuEwa has featured at colleges, arts venues, schools, libraries, conferences. She is definitely a sought-after Keynote, having presented at the National Education Association several times in English literacy. And DuEwa has earned the following degrees: BA in English from Hampton University, an MS in Curriculum and Teaching at Fordham University, an MFA Creative Writing from the New School, and an EDM in Educational Leadership from Columbia University. Please put your hands and your voices together and welcome our professional development keynote, DuEwa Frazier. Good morning, esteemed educators. Thank you to Dr. Etta F. Carter, Dr. Carla Carter, and all members of the National Sorority of Phi Delta Kappa Incorporated for having me here today. For the theme of Bold 21st Century Education, Cultural Relevancy, I'm going to discuss culturally relevant teaching and share my experiences as an English educator in hopes that you will find value in the information. According to educational scholar, professor, and researcher Gloria Ladson-Billings, culturally relevant teaching is a pedagogy of opposition committed to collective empowerment. Billings asserted in her article, Toward a Theory of Culturally Relevant Teaching, that culturally relevant teaching has 3 propositions. Students must experience academic success. Students must develop and/or maintain cultural competence. And students must develop a critical consciousness through which they challenge the status quo of the current social order. Culturally relevant teaching means supporting students' academic needs. If you're a teacher or instructional coach, your focus is on content knowledge, providing academic rigor, aligning your lessons to the standards, preparing students for standardized assessments, and mentoring new teachers. If you're a school leader, your focus is on operations, parent engagement, providing a safe and supportive culture for learning, student growth, and faculty development. Supporting students to achieve academic success and literacy begins with introducing students to high-interest, culturally relevant texts. Many of our students are living within high-stress, low-income communities and households where they are impacted by parent unemployment, chronic illness, neighborhood violence, substandard housing, inadequate health care, and issues in social justice that plague the most vulnerable in our society. Literacy is the gateway to all pathways of knowledge. One impactful way to build our students' sense of self and pride in what they do, what they can do, and who they are is by helping them to acquire knowledge through literacy. Our students need literacy engagement to open their minds to the possibilities that exist for them, that introduces them to characters in texts who look like them, representative of their cultures and communities, and features themes and learning lessons that they can relate to and also question. There has been a heavy discussion in recent years in the publishing industry and education circles about gaps in the availability of diverse stories for children and teens from underrepresented communities, particularly African American and Hispanic youth, but also Caribbean, African, Indian, Native American, and Asian youth. When I was a K-12 teacher in New York City, I searched for books by diverse authors featuring high interest, engaging themes with diverse characters for my middle grade students. As a part of teaching the balanced literacy reading and writing workshop model, I created a classroom library with leveled books. I taught writing lessons to show my students how good writers craft stories, write essays, and generate poems. I taught reading strategies to help my students build reading stamina. I facilitated lessons to help them understand how to use text features, how to identify keywords and central themes, how to record what they read, and hold conversations about their progress with me during conferences. Some of the high-interest, diverse, and culturally relevant titles I introduced my students to included Tears of a Tiger by Sharon Draper, Miracles Boys by Jacqueline Woodson, 145th Street Stories, Slam, and Hoops by Walter Dean Myers, Esperanza Rising by Pam Munoz, The Skin I'm In by Sharon G. Flake, M.C. Higgins the Great by Virginia Hamilton, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, and Let the Circle Be Unbroken by Mildred Taylor. I also shared the poetry of Langston Hughes, Gwendolyn Brooks, and poetry from anthologies featuring hip-hop generation writers such as Step Into a World, Bum Rush the Page, and my anthology, Check the Rhyme, an anthology of female poets and MCs. As the years went by and I became a high school teacher, I added culturally responsive, high-interest YA, or young adult novels, to my classroom library, so that my most reluctant readers would have contemporary reading choices and I could help them achieve their independent reading goals. These titles included Payback, The Fallen, and Promises to Keep from the Bluford High series, Jade's Legacy from the Drama High series, Spin It Like That, and Can't Stop the Shine from the Kamani True series, So Not the Drama, and Do Not Get It Twisted by Paula Chase. The language in these stories for teen readers was witty, engaging, realistic, and representative of how my students spoke. Through these texts, students could engage with and reflect on the author's purpose, how the characters were depicted, whether or not they were realistic depictions from the students' perspectives, if the students could see themselves or their peers in the story, and whether or not the story would remain of value to future young readers for years to come. I collected what I discovered were the most current and engaging stories for teens, some of them with urban settings featuring characters who grappled with challenges that my students characterize as drama they could relate to. I found that my students loved these realistic, contemporary stories and they wanted more. In 2014, I became an author of a realistic fiction teen story, Deanne in the Middle. I was excited to add to the canon of young adult literature for a new generation of students. I do know, however, that all students all teachers were not on board with sharing contemporary culturally relevant stories for teens. Some teachers expressed to me that exposing secondary students to anything other than literary classics wouldn't help them in their reading and writing skills. But I thought differently. I found that students were more open to reading classic texts when I presented them with engaging contemporary texts to read independently, with a partner, or in small groups with me and other peers. There were times I held lunchtime or after-school reading book club talks with my students to discuss the contemporary stories they were being introduced to. My students expressed that they could relate to many of the characters in the stories that we read because these characters experience friendship, family challenges, questions about identity, struggles with self-esteem, social issues, and questions about the future, just like they did. A light bulb turned on for me. I discovered the answer to previous questions I held as a new teacher. Questions such as, how do I get my students to read and write more? And how do I find out what they enjoy reading? The answer was to introduce them to books featuring characters they can relate to. Discuss the books in the same way I would a classic text, by introducing author's purpose, literary elements, character, plot, dialogue, and personal connections to the text in order to maintain students' focus about the value of what they were reading, regardless of who wrote it or when it was written. Additionally, I found that I could still give students essay questions and prompts to help them analyze a text and craft the kind of writing that is appropriate for assessments. Currently, educators have many more choices in high-interest, culturally responsive texts than I did in the early 2000s when I was teaching K-12. Books by Rita Williams Garcia, Kwame Alexander, and many others are the current books that educators can seek to use as culturally responsive texts. Because our students are highly connected to digital platforms, I encourage teachers to use digital texts, audiobooks, video, and tablets to help all students access reading and build upon their reading skills with themes and culturally responsive characters that they care about. Many of the popular middle grade and young adult novels that appear in our school and library book lists also have companion teacher resources that can be found and accessed online. Culturally relevant teaching means utilizing students' culture for learning. The culture of the present generation of students includes social media, hip-hop, popular culture, fashion, digital media, and peer-driven engagement. I do not believe that educators should simplify or dumb down the curriculum because we might think that students cannot rise to the challenge. What I believe is that we should provide rigorous instruction drawing from themes and materials across content to challenge our students, help them think critically, and provide a mirror for them to see themselves in order to form their goals and become contributing members of society. Our students are social beings. They enjoy sharing their life memories with others, which means that collaborative learning with peers should be a part of culturally relevant teaching and building cultural competence. Students can learn from one another's cultures and experience as they are skill building. Maintaining cultural competence as an educator means being attuned to what students care about and the issues that impact them most by infusing cultural competence into every aspect of your curriculum. For example, if you understand that hip-hop culture is something that students are highly attuned to, you will think about how to connect essays and introduce them to interviews by hip-hop scholars who discuss topics in youth culture, education, history, social justice, and entertainment, which can be used as a foundation for a warm-up activity, partner discussion, research assignments, or personal essays that you assign. Additionally, if you are teaching poetry along with teaching the classics, you'll want to infuse some known hip-hop poets or rappers into your lessons. The writings of the late rapper Tupac Shakur from his collection, The Rose That Grew from Concrete, the anthology Bum Rush the Page, edited by Tony Medina and Luis Reyes Rivera, can be used to discuss hip-hop poetry, literary elements, and themes that are of high interest. There is a TED performance I enjoyed using in my classroom by poet and actor Lemon Anderson, titled, "Please Don't Take My Air Jordans." I would show the video of the poet performing and also share the text of the poem. We would then focus on literary elements such as tone and conflict and imagery in order to analyze the poem. I would also ask students a series of questions, asking why the poet speaker valued the Air Jordans so much. This would open up a great discussion about what our youth believe is valuable and what our youth use as currency to gain social acceptance and popularity among their peers. I will share this video during the professional development session. James Baldwin stated in his 1963 essay, A Talk to Teachers, "The paradox of education is precisely this, that as one begins to become conscious, one begins to examine the society in which he is being educated. The purpose of education, finally, is to create in a person the ability to look at the world for himself." Culturally relevant teaching means supporting students to develop a broader socio-political consciousness that allows them to critique the values, cultural norms, and institutions that maintain social inequalities. As educators, we should all be well-read, teaching with cultural responsiveness and respect for difference in mind, and knowledgeable about the day-to-day issues that affect our students and their communities. In the last several years, issues of social justice have been brought to the forefront. Some of these events in our communities have occurred while students were on summer break. Yet at the start of the new semester in August, we expect our students to return to school with fresh and open minds, ready to learn without having a full grasp of some of the negative, traumatic experiences they have encountered in the previous month or so where they live. We live in a society where students are impacted by popular culture, what is marketed to them, what the messages are from the media about who they are, and the stigmas that are attached to them. Digital information is transmitted, and we expect students to read and write for standardized assessments, yet we don't engage them in an analysis of the arguments that are affecting them on an everyday basis. One year when I taught middle school, several of my students who were African American youth rushed into my classroom after lunch, asking me, "Is it true that all Black people speak Ebonics, Ms. Frazier?" I asked them to tell me more about their question. They explained to me that a teacher from another ethnic group told them that all Black people speak Ebonics. When the students questioned the teacher about it, she stated, "It's true. Look it up on Google. Also, if you just go down to the city, you'll hear that's how they, Black people, speak." The students felt angry and confused because, as African American children, they perceived that they were being insulted, but they didn't know why. The teacher made a culturally insensitive statement. She did not provide context or lead students to meaningful resources to understand her statement. I held a discussion with them about code switching, vernacular, regional dialect, and I explained that it's not a correct statement to say that all Black people speak Ebonics. Rather, that Black people, like all people, speak in many different ways depending on the region where they live and whether they are speaking to someone in a formal or informal environment. I use this as an example because we want students to question what is in front of them, especially those messages and stereotypes that are used to label and minimize them. We also want them to research and discover the origins of words and cultural symbols, and to hold an intelligent conversation about these topics. Other ways that students can develop critical consciousness is by learning to identify and analyze arguments. Find the argument in a newspaper headline. Find the argument in a magazine cover photo. Find the argument in an interview on a news segment with a controversial person. Find the argument in a commercial about a product. Why is it better than another product? We can build our students' writing and verbal communication skills this way. We are living in a time where culturally responsive teaching is necessary because it is connected to students' intellectual, sociocultural, and emotional growth. While there are forces working to make sure that some students do not succeed, it is up to us to find the most impactful ways to educate our students and equip them with the culturally relevant skills needed to compete and thrive in our world. I will share more about culturally relevant teaching and texts, including my latest children's book, Alice's Musical Debut, at today's professional development session. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.